Well, welcome to my new office. Yeah. Here's that camper I've been talking about having. I think I've said before, maybe not exactly the camper I wanted, but I dig it. A lot to look at, a lot of color, a lot of pattern. It's pretty wild. Well, anyway, I'll talk about some more electricity. And, that's way too big of a drop. But first, yeah, check this out. There it is. My new office. And, you know, potential bug out vehicle, I guess. I don't know. I'm into holding the ground these days. Not so much into this idea of bugging out to the middle of nowhere, or, you know, going to live down by the river in my little lean-to, or my camper, or my tent, or whatever. You know, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, doing that. Free yourself from the enslavement system and go down by the river and be free. Yeah, it's really tempting. It's a nice idea. But I tend to agree with the people who don't so much agree with that idea. People who say, well, that's just going to make you homeless. Alright? This is true. That'll just make you homeless. You can't live in one of these long term without some dirt to be on. You have to have land you can be on, right? And I think most people have run into this reality here in the last couple of years as they've considered bugging out, you know, freaking out, time to get out of here, world's going to hell. And you know, you come to find there ain't hardly nowhere you can park a caravan without getting kicked out. Even here, you know, you can't technically be living in it, you know. It's like against the law to and ordinances and stuff to have them on the street for more than a few days. You can't live in the thing, you know, for more than like a 2-week period or something like that. Like, it's all nice and wrapped up tight, you know. And I mean, if you look at Portland or Seattle or any of these big cities that are going to hell right now, there's just lines and lines and lines of ghetto wrecked RVs everywhere, and it's a big problem because there's no sanitation. People are just dumping their sewage right on the ground. You know, like this one doesn't even have a toilet or a shower, so it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, you know. And even just using them for fun, going out there and going camping in this thing, it's a pain in the ass, man. I'd rather just take my car and use a tent. Like, it's not the way. It's really not. I don't think I'll be keeping this thing for more than a year or two. It's just kind of fun. I happen to have it, so I'm gonna use it for a little while. But anyway, that's all very much related to the topic of this channel, which is electricity and sort of the unseen forces that control our reality, that control us and dictate us. There's always all this talk of power dynamics, you know, and power, who has the power, and we gotta take the power back, and we've had our power stolen from us, and You know, all of this kind of mumbo jumbo about power dynamics and how it's the white man that has all the power and he's stealing it from everyone else, and it's like, oh my god. You only think that kind of stupid shit if you don't understand power dynamics, right? Well, I've been toying around with electricity for most of my life because my dad's an electrician. So I was learning about it early. And I'm no expert in it, really. Just, you know, I've sort of intuitively figured out some things about it and understood power dynamics, you know, for years before I really dove into electrical theory. I was already making the connections between the words used to describe electrical processes, electrical theory, and the wider world, right, of, you know, culture and politics, and recognizing that the term power meant electricity, like literally, not figuratively, not sort of, you know, a couple different meanings to this thing. No, it's literal. Power is wattage or force, right? It's an electrical term. No matter where you see it, it's an electrical term. So anyway, I don't want to yammer on too much, but today I put together a little hands-on example to tie all of this together, because I'm going to lay down the terminology of Ohm's law and Faraday's law and how these terms interrelate with each other to control and direct and affect the flow and the direction and the circuitry of the power, right? So, because this is the unseen world, I've had to talk a lot in symbolism and, you know, stories, and it's very hard to just explain it super visually because it's still only really something you can see in your mind. So I'm going to do my best. Here we go. So, house power, 120 volts, alternating current. Got me a line running back here to me setup to show you what I'm talking about. There's the book. Yeah. So this is basically what's going on inside your walls. It's not terribly complex, actually. You don't really need to understand electrical theory to do this. And that's why a lot of electricians don't actually understand electrical theory all that deeply, because you don't have to. But here we have a little don't try this at home example. Got to tie everything together right, or it gets dangerous. I mean, it's only 120 volts, so it's not going to kill you. But, yeah, here we have, you know, our hot wire, our neutral wire, and the ground wire in there. And they come around to this switch where we tie the neutrals together, because the neutral is the path back to source, completes the circuit. The hot wire, the ground wire, the hot wires here are what get interrupted by the switch. You've seen some, you know, diagrams of that. I'll try to show some more again. The ground wire, you'll notice, is simply attached to the metal part of this device. The ground is the safety. You got to tie all of your metal parts together so that if you end up with a short, you don't get zapped when you touch the metal, because that current will prefer taking the ground wire back to the ground source rather than going through you when you touch it, see? So then when you get into these motors here, the ground wire on the motor is just bonded to the rest of the grounded system. And then you got your neutral and your hot side. That goes to your transformer, because you're taking 120 volts AC alternating current and then turning it back into direct current. And then that's where you get your polarity, directional spin. The direct current is relative motion. So anyway, try to keep this concise and quick, because it's all about visualization. So really the main thing you need to understand to work with electricity is Ohm's law, which to me kind of sounds like Ohm. Ohm is resistance measurement, symbolized by the little Ankh symbol, ancient symbol. And we use R to represent it in our formulas. But here we have Ohm's law. This is the visual you use to comprehend Ohm's law. So we have E is voltage, I is current, R is resistance. This line means division, this line means multiplication. So in applications of electrical circuitry, you usually have 2 out of the 3 values, and you can solve for the third. So the idea behind this triangle, you know, I equals E over R. But when you arrange them in these triangles, then you can really visualize it. And so if you're trying to solve for current, you just cover the current value, and then that leaves you with what you need to do to solve for it. So to find current, you divide voltage by resistance, right? And anyway, I won't go too deep into that. And there's actually 2 triangles, because you also have the wattage is energy released or expended in the form of light or heat or motion. Depends on, you know. Anyway, the way I like to write down electrical theory is really focusing on the language of it all. Your current is measured in amperes or amps. So that's like the flow through the wires, right? The current flows, so to speak. Voltage is potential. And then you have resistance, which we'll get into that here in a little bit. Has to do with each device in the circuit is a resistor. And then you have wattage, and wattage is the energy expended in the form of heat, light, or motion. Wattage is power, okay? We get over into here. I talked about this equation sometime back in previous videos. And it's the force equals flow rate times pressure, which is watt equals current times voltage. So voltage is, again, kind of a synonym of pressure. The problem with electrical theory and why it seems to be generally misunderstood even by a lot of electricians is because you can't see it. You have to visualize it. You have to comprehend what's really going on, and you have to see it in your mind's eye. And there aren't very many ways that are easy to depict what the mind's eye sees it to be. So commonly, the examples given for electricians to be able to install this equipment, you know, properly and safely and all of that good stuff. The examples used in the schooling are based on fluid dynamics, right? So you're like visualizing it like water through pipes, right? Which is enough to comprehend it, enough to install it. But that's about it. because it's not fluid, and fluid dynamics don't actually apply. So we have these terms like pressure, is more of a fluid dynamics type of term, but it helps you comprehend, to interchange these terms, what this unseen property is in the whole equation, the relationships between these properties, and how that is descriptive of electricity. So let's see here. Let's get into circuits. So basically, you got to understand circuits. The series circuit, you have light bulbs, say, which is a resistor. See, the resistor is the little squiggly. That's actually the symbol of a resistor on diagrams. But in a series circuit, the wire, the circuit goes through the resistor, back out, and around and through another resistor, back out, and back to source. And that's your completed circuit. And so in a series circuit, if you blow a light bulb, there's literally no longer a path for the electricity to travel. And so the whole thing becomes deactivated. And that's why we work primarily in parallel circuits, which wire things up in such a way that there's always still a path back to source through a different resistor, and then usually even, a different wire that just connects it all, so that if one light bulb pops, that's not interrupting the circuit, and your circuitry can continue to operate with one light bulb instead of two, or whatever the device may be, whatever the resistor may be. See, any device in a circuit is a resistor. Any device you put in the circuit is going to have a resistance value, and then you add up all those resistance values, and that's how you figure out how many devices you can put on a circuit before it starts overloading things and making it arc and spark and melt and fall apart. So I talked about this previous video. The way that humans are electrical, electromagnetic beings. We are generators / motors / batteries. So in essence, we are a device, a resistor, which then kind of brings you back to ohm and the idea of saying the ohms and lowering your resistance, increasing your flow and all that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, don't it? So basically, this is how electricity is generated. This is a basic picture of it. You got a magnetic field. You spin a conductor inside of that magnetic field, give it relative motion, and then that creates voltage on the conductor. And then you've got your ground, and that's your completed circuit in basic. So that brings us to generator theory. Little Tesla 369 reference there. Remember magnetic field, toroid field stuff. And then that brings us back to this symbol that is carved in stone. I mean, it's all over the place, and people think that like those are two different teams, and like that's evil and that's good, or that's good and that's evil, and there's like these two, kind of symbolic cultural traditions or whatever related to those two. But you will see this, combined a lot. And that's because this is generator theory, right? Which is Faraday's law, which I just kind of said, which is that you put a conductor through a magnetic field, and it produces voltage on the conductor. You need relative motion, so that's your directional spin, right? And so basically what I'm saying is this picture of a generator is this picture, No doubt about it. You get into the geometries of this stuff and you start to see that. You realize that's what it is, you know? Somebody can tell me it means something else, but what's funny is that whenever people describe to me what that stuff really means, you know, some kind of esoteric, you know, ideas about culture and, you know, symbols of peace or what, all this stuff. What's funny to me is that everything that they say describes to me electrical theory using the terms of electrical theory most of the time. So it's just kind of weird that no matter what, no matter how someone chooses to try to describe what these symbols mean, they always mean what I'm saying they mean. It just depends on your comprehension of the unseen forces and language. So tried to keep this quick. I don't want to do these big freaking long videos anymore, you know? It's too much. So here we go. What you have here is you have your stator and your rotor. Basically, when I showed this is the basic understanding of the generator theory, which is that you have to insert a conductor into a magnetic field, introduce relative motion, and that's what creates electricity out of the magnetism. But when you start to really get deeper into the comprehension of that, it gets a little more complicated because, well, first off, the way our modern technology is built is what we do is we use the stator as the conductor and the rotor as the magnetic field. Like literally put an electromagnet inside of a conductor and spin the magnet. And so it is the same thing, but the way we actually do it in practical application is sort of opposite. But if you've been watching my videos, you've noticed that that's pretty much everything with this electrical theory, including the polarity of negative and positive and conventions versus alkaline and acidic and pH being a measurement of voltage and all this stuff. Anyway, the basics is that in a generator, you use direct current to create a magnetic field and to introduce your spin. And then that relationship between the magnetic field and the conductor gives you alternating or direct current depending on how many conductors you have. Alternating current is supposed to be with 3, 120 degrees out of phase. But this is just a simplified drawing. And so the way generators work is to increase the intensity of the magnetic field. Direct current has to be pumped into the magnetic field. So maybe I'll just try to let this make itself apparent rather than trying to overly describe it too much. But some basic symbols of electricity. Remember I said resistor, a little squiggly line there. Some of these symbols, you know, you can actually find carved in stone, and I contend that they mean the same thing. And just another little point of, you know, linguistics. The governor in a generator controls the generator speed to ensure constant output. The governor, right? So you'd have to watch my previous videos to get into the in-depth explanation of how the body is an electromagnetic process. It's a generator, a motor, and a battery storage system with sets of circuitries, right? And so whenever I'm talking about electrical theory and these terms, you know, it applies to us as humans and our social constructs, right? What's the governor do? Right? They turn the knob, they tighten down the screws, slow things down. We've been seeing that. What have governors been doing? They've been They've been winding the whole thing down. They've been crushing the movement, right? The speed of movement. Everybody's going slower. Life is slower these days. Yeah. So anyway, let's use some more tangible, hands-on examples of this. All right, so here we have a motor. This is actually a fan motor, just like this one. Motors and generators have a lot in common, so even though it's not a perfect example, it is a decent example of how the generator works. When I was just describing how you have the stator, right? There's your wires, your conductors, right? In this iron stator, your copper wires going to it. And then you have the rotor, right? Which in this case is a motor, is being, the AC is being converted by this transformer into direct current to have relative motion and to spin the motor, right? But if you think about this also in terms of the generator, when I was talking about the electromagnet, this would be the electromagnet. This would be the current carrying conductors, right, that you're passing through the magnetic field, right, and generating on one end, and then, you know, you arrange things such that you have an output as a motor. These are all fart fan motors, like bathroom fans, right? I think they're just a great little example of how this stuff works. There's also a great example of a more visually obvious resistor right here. See, you got these coils. This is for heat circuit. This is one of those heated bathroom fans. So that is your squiggly line in the symbol for resistor. Another example of a resistor. Got this light bulb. Just do one of these real quick. See if we can preserve this. I only get one try. Yeah. Well, I broke it, or it was already broken. Hard to say. But see that little filament? I'm gonna lay this down here. Try to zoom. Squiggly line. Now, this is a dead bulb. This should be connected to here to create your full circuit pathway. But that's a resistor, right? That's why light bulbs are measured in wattage, is because that's the measurement of power used or power expended, or heat or light emitted, which, you know, light is not an emission, and Ken Wheeler and all that stuff. I'm going to get into some of that here in a bit, but yeah. Let's cover that up again so I don't get all cut up on it. But, you know, hopefully these visualizations are putting pictures in your mind, putting pieces together, clarifying stuff I've talked about previously. All right, so here we go. I have connected my don't try this at home situation to source, 120 volt AC, utility power. And first, we're gonna take this little wand and check that, yep, we got a hot wire. Now, all this really does is detect the magnetic field that is around these wires. I'll get into more of that, how to visualize that, but you gotta understand that around this wire is a stretched out toroidal magnetic field, and the current voltage inside the insulated copper wire then has the magnetic field around it. And that makes sense with the generator theory, hopefully, as we talked about, right? But I'll show some more specific pictures of that. But as you can see, we got this switch, so our circuit is interrupted. There's no hot going on here, and we don't have a running fart fan. So let's give it a shot here. Flip our switch. We now have a running fan. Okay. Relative motion. Expending energy measured in watts. Right? Got hot wire here, hot wire here. So we'll now we've interrupted the circuit. Fan powers down. Pretty cool, huh? And that's, you know, the exact same motor as I showed here with this little stator and rotor example. It's the same thing, right? So what we need to do to really comprehend what's going on here is be able to visualize the electromagnetic process here. And to do that, I have kind of another little crappy drawing that's the best I can do. I mean, I could maybe use a computer to do this better, and I'm gonna mess around with that for illustrating it. But like, this is what I see in my head when, you know, you think about the grid, or you think about politics or culture and people and groups and philosophy and religion and all this stuff. This is what I see, right? It's this. Yeah. Phallic, I know. But I think that that actually is important to comprehend, right? So we've got our generator, right? We've got our magnetic field with our current carrying conductor introduced into it. We spin it with relative motion. So now we have current on the wire, and around the wire we have a magnetic field, right? So really, when you're taking, when you're channeling energy, voltage from one magnetic field here, you're essentially stretching that magnetic field out, that torus field. So that's what I imagine. That's what I see in my mind's eye. Is I picture all of the wires in your walls literally having a tubular toroid field going all the way around and through every single wire, every single hot wire that's, you know, currently active. And then you have it around, you know, whatever device or resistor is in that circuit. And so, you know, you got to understand that the electricity and the magnetism, they're kind of inextricably linked, right? We have a lot of people these days who are digging into symbolism and ancient traditions of magic and the secrets, you know, the initiate schools and secret societies and all this shit, talking about what it all means, and etymology and symbolism and religion and lies and, you know, power structures. And something that's been very disturbing to me has been these individuals who are preaching basically that electricity is satanic and magnetism is God. I got a big problem with that. It doesn't hold true if you actually comprehend electricity and magnetism, right? The other problem I have with these folks is that if you ask them where they're getting their information when they talk about this stuff, they pretty much say, oh, it's just gnosis. It's God, the creator, telling me this. And I'm like, boy, oh boy, that is interesting. What God are you listening to? Because that's not making sense to me. You know, we got these people these days preaching that veganism and a frugivore diet is absolutely 100% necessary because we need to have alkaline bodies, not acidic bodies. And, you know, basically they're kind of teaching that, like, you can't talk to or access the mind of the creator if you don't have an alkaline body, right? You have to be magnetic. You have to be pure magnetism, right? To be an ascended master, you gotta have your light body all figured out, and or else you can't talk to God. Well, you know, that doesn't sit right with me to begin with, but you know, it really doesn't sit right when you break down electromagnetism. And if you study someone like Ken Wheeler or others, Tesla, and get into the properties of these things, you know, Ken Wheeler says, and it seems to hold very much true, that magnetism, by definition, is the loss of energy. Magnetism is lossy. It is the case that to produce a stronger magnetic field, you have to input more voltage, more electricity, right? So there's kind of this codependent relationship between electricity and magnetism, and that is true in the body, as evidenced by the pH balance scale. pH is a measurement of voltage, right? Alkalinity versus acidity, negative, positive, and the relationship between negative, positive, and how they transfer the energy from each other, right? Like the negative ions, electrons, flow to the positive, the taker of the electrons, right? And so that's that negative positive, like that's how the voltage is carried around in the body. It's a fucking fact, right? We are electrical beings. So the way I see it, to be only alkaline is to be dead. To be only acidic is to be dead, right? Which almost seems like what these frugivores are preaching, like that they are trapped in this, you know, fallen, wicked, you know, evil form, and they want to be, you know, they want to ditch their bodies. They want to be nothing but a fucking floating magnetic field, you know, flying around. And it's like, dude, that don't make no sense at all. That to me just sounds like what's wrong with ancient paganism. Like, it's kind of just a revival of these kind of weird, like, drink the Kool-Aid cults, right? Where you gotta, it's like you gotta hate this world, and you just want to be a free-floating spirit or some crap. I don't know, but that's really where I'm going with this whole series. What I'm trying to illustrate is the mechanisms upon which our you know, material existence is based, and the mechanisms by which so-called magic and all that stuff works. It's all electricity, right? All this ritual shit, it's all about generator theory, right? Using people, right? Because we are like the pinnacle of technology. We are the technology, biotech, right? Nobody can figure out how to make one of us. They try to claim that they can. They want us to think that they can. They fucking can't. I'm confident of it. They don't have that power. They don't have that ability. But they organize us into groups, right? Because by doing that, you're introducing more electricity by nature of the fact that we are electrical process, right? All of our vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and our digestion and everything, it's an electrical process, electrochemical. And so by adding more people to a group, essentially what you're doing is increasing the voltage and thereby increasing the strength of the magnetic field. And then, you know, the sorcerers or magicians or politicians or fucking whatever, you know, they're the one pulling switches, flipping the switches, you know, this one right here. You know, think about it. So it's not a perfect analogy because this is technological devices and not human bodies. But, I mean, basically, this right here is your group of people, your political party, you know, your fucking power number, force to be reckoned with. You know, here's one guy's job, here's another guy's job, here's another guy's job, and they all are wired up in the circuit towards, you know, an output. But who's this guy, you know? Right? Like, none of these people have the ability to do what I'm doing right there by doing that, right? That switch flipper, that's your sorcerers, that's your magicians, that's your politicians. That's your unseen, you know, invisible hand bullshit is really just the person who comprehends that this is how the world works, and then by the very act of comprehending it, they then can choose to use that. And you know, I've tested this in the most ethical ways that I could find to test it. I tested this all with running filmmaking crews, right? Because that's like a very well understood or very well known to be a kind of a pyramid structure, right? An invisible pyramid, hierarchies, right? You got your director, and then on down you got all your helpers and your, you know, your levels, layers of expertise, and they're all, you know, commands go downhill, shit rolls downhill, and then, you know, the energy is then kind of piped back up the hill to the top where, you know, the output is. That's the leader, you know, the director. So, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to put this together with other videos I've made. I don't think this alone is going to make my point, but that's okay. The point I'm getting at is electricity, electromagnetism is fundamentally misunderstood by just about everyone who talks about it here on the internet. And it can be understood, comprehended. You can put the pieces together through simply studying geometry and ancient symbolism. It's what all that ancient symbolism is about. That's what all of the pantheons and all that stuff, it's what they're really referring to is these processes, right? I mean, supposedly even Tesla claimed that he figured out his whole, you know, electrical wizardry because he comprehended what ancient Egypt was all about. So to wrap it up, I'm going to just show an illustration of how to picture this around you within you, in society, in the world, in people, right? So here it is. So basically, when I talk about generator theory, right, the magnetic field and the current carrying conductor, and this symbol is a picture of an electrical generator. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what it fucking is. Here's how I picture it. Right? There's your black and white. There's your electricity and magnetism. Right? There's your symbols. There's your Merkaba light body, you know? Your magnetic field, toroidal field expressed around your body, you know? That's been measured. That's the aura and all that shit. But then you got your, you know, your material, tangible, current carrying conductor, right? Your digestion, electrochemical, energy processes, right? And again, I've gotten into this deeper in previous videos, how exactly those processes work. So just go watch those. I'm not going to reiterate it all. But this is how you comprehend what all of this generator theory, symbolism, geometry, Ohm's law and Faraday's law, power dynamics, potential, power, current, flow, right? Pyramid structures, multiplication, division, resistance, ancient symbolism, again, right? Linguistics, humans, wires, devices, resistors, okay? It's all the same thing. Once you can comprehend this, you just know, and it doesn't really matter what anybody says, you know that this, all of this, that we in these modern times are enslaved by, all of this is derived from a comprehension and an understanding and a use of this knowledge, okay? Is what it is, guys. All right. So all the way back in the beginning of this book, this is the first page. This is a breakdown of the invisible pyramid that I made. And I drew this to explain what had been done after the fact to my filmmaking partner. This is basically the crew breakdown of the project that we did together. It was too much to try to explain it all before or while we were doing it, but once we were done, I sat down and I drew it out for her and I said, this is what we actually did. So she was the director and I was the director of photography. Okay, so I was serving her and serving the project as a whole, but just because I was below someone else in the hierarchy didn't mean I wasn't the electrician, right? Because I was. And this, all the arrows sort of just described like the hierarchy, the flow of information, the circuitry of how everybody had been arranged and how this invisible, call it pyramid, was arranged and constructed, how it was that we had accomplished what we had accomplished. Now, I don't think of it as pyramids. I'm not into hierarchies. I always have described it as like situational hierarchies. Like we're all equal, but as soon as, you know, we have a task to do, we have to organize into the structure, get that done, and then as soon as it's over, we're back to equal again. So no treating anybody like shit just because they're, you know, below you or some bullcrap like that. Like I was kind of constantly preaching like ethics and morals and like equality while doing this, and you know, those weren't contradictory, you know, because I was explaining it. It's situational, you know. Yeah, I'm this guy, but this guy is my equal until we're in that situation where the hierarchy has to form, and now this person has to do what the fuck I tell him to do, right? But then as soon as we're not in that situation anymore, like, no letting that hierarchy bleed into like regular interactions is basically what my kind of ethos was for this shoot. Anyway, I don't think of it as a pyramid. I think of it as a phalanx. There's another phallic term for you, but a phalanx, it's like the shield wall, the triangular shield wall that can be used to penetrate an army, right? Or in this case, to penetrate the concentric rings of walls that we had to face as a crew, as a team, to get through to, you know, the fictitious paradise, which, that's a fiction. You know, principal photography, that's the shooting schedule. Pickup shoots, that's like where you have to go back and film stuff that you need in, you know, after the fact. And then post-production is way harder than the rest of it, because you got to actually put it all together and succeed and get it done. And like 90% of films don't get to this point, you know, to even shooting, and then 90% of those don't get through shooting, and then 90% of those don't, you know, get to do pickup shoots, and then 90% of the films that get through all of those obstacles fail to complete post-production. So it's like this tiny percentage of movies that ever actually get done, right? And that's why there's so many filmmakers with you know, resumes of films that don't exist, myself included. But yeah, that little paradise at the end, that's a fiction. That is the fiction that drives most wannabe filmmakers. It's really sad, and I have done everything in my power to kind of communicate the reality of the situation, but it's really sad because when you're working on a project that's going well and like it's working, like, yeah, we're making a movie, you know, this is awesome. This happens to all the noobs, myself included, you know, back in the day, where when you're in that situation, you feel like you've made it. I'm now a filmmaker. I'm now legitimized. You know, this is going to be my life going forward. I'm going to get to keep doing this for a living, right? And it's going to be awesome because I'm living my dream. Well, it doesn't work that way. And it's really sad to watch people get taken advantage of on films, because it's that belief in that fictitious paradise at the other side of the battle. It's that belief that keeps people going, right? That energizes them. And a lot of unethical filmmakers take huge advantage of that. Like, they get people to work for way too little or no money at all, you know, and just absolutely extract the energy out of these people without any return, you know. And they'll make big promises and, oh, it'll be awesome, you know, you'll get a percentage of the incomes after it gets completed. Like, remember what I said about this tiny percentage of films that even get there, you know? And then again, how many of those films are dog shit and don't make any money? Like, no, it doesn't work that way. The reality of filmmaking is you work 12, 16, 20-hour days on the regular. It's absolutely detrimental to private, personal life relationships. Like, you can barely have like a significant other if you're going to be a filmmaker. You know, it's really one of the most disgusting forms of slavery I've witnessed. Filmmaking is because it so takes advantage of people's dreams and doesn't really pay any returns on that, never really comes through on that. And yeah, it's brutal. So basically most people in filmmaking either get jaded and quit, or they get jaded and keep doing it. And so filmmakers are notoriously difficult to work with. Like, You know, they're so used to being mistreated. Like, it's just, it's a very, very brutal, unethical, and straight up criminal industry in so many ways. Like, the industry standards of how a lot of the things are done are straight up illegal, unlawful, unethical, immoral, fucking wrong. And yet people get conditioned into thinking, well, this is how it's done. This is just how you do it. And, you know, I figured out for myself and even proved it to some other people that no, those conventions are incorrect, improper, unethical, immoral, illegal, rights violations, and in actuality, they're also not the best way to do it. You know, if you have some moral fiber and, you know, care about people and treat people as equals and arrange things such that people are well taken care of, it goes way, way better. But, you know, that's just me being completely unconventional and completely aggressively against conventions. Like, I'll never be famous, but I have earned myself a little bit of infamy, so to speak, because of how aggressively anti-establishment I am with this stuff, and how vocal I am about it. Like, I literally don't care. I've treated every film I've ever worked on like it was probably going to be the last one I ever did, including this one that, you know, was a $100,000 budget, big crew, like 30 people probably total, 6 weeks principal photography, multiple pickup shoots after that. It's been in post-production now for frickin' 2 years. You know, the lockdowns and all that didn't help. That kind of slowed up the post-production process. But, you know, it's out of my hands. I can't do anything about it. If it gets done, it gets done. And I'll be excited to be able to share a finished product. But, yeah, I mean, filmmaking, it's really, truly one of the best places to study magic. Because, I mean, not only is it movie magic, which is literally like a trickery, you know, camera tricks, but it's also a pyramidal or phalanx, invisible structure, circuitry that it takes to even accomplish it, because you have to have a bunch of people and you have to be able to be really efficient. You know, you have to get shit done, and it's so easy to just completely lose momentum and not get anything done. And, you know, then you add on the psychology. You know, when you're dealing with actors, you need them to not be faking it, not be pretending. So you need them to actually be feeling the emotions that they're supposed to be conveying, right? And so that's a whole another rabbit hole of an ethical tightrope of, like, psychological and emotional manipulation that directors and, you know, producers and directors of photography even participate in, you know, where, you know, you've heard the stories, things that directors will say or do to an actor to kind of like abuse them into that, like, emotional state that is needed on camera that day, you know. That's fucked and far out shit. But then there's just, you know, the more subtle and, I think, more ethical form of it, where you don't try to introduce those dramas on people, but you do take advantage of it when they are just already there, you know. Like if an actor shows up to set pissed, and I know that we need him to be pissed for the character that day, like, I'm not going to try to diffuse his anger or whatever at all. I just, you know, I'm not going to comfort him, but I'm also not going to poke him. I just film it, you know? So anyway, why do I know the things that I know? People keep asking me, well, if you know so much, why aren't you fucking filthy rich and famous and have books published and peer-reviewed papers and all this crap? And it's too much to explain. I'm sitting here going, dude, do you understand the ethical pitfalls of using this kind of magic to get rich? I mean, shit, dude. That's like literally the definition of selling your soul and being damned to hell. Like, I don't want to do that. I didn't get into any of this because I wanted to be rich or famous. I got into it because I wanted to comprehend, like, the structures, the systems, the powers that be, you know? So I've had an interesting life, you know, kind of pretty different, unconventional life. And, yeah, there's so much that I know about that the internet is getting wrong. And I know I don't have it all figured out, but I just know some things. And I'm consistently disturbed at the perpetuation of misinformation. And these days, we're seeing a massive amount of misinformation, disinformation, conflicting information. You know, the truth community is just fucking full bore going nuts, you know. It's really interesting, like, sure, but oh, so many dangerous misconceptions floating around these days. And oh, it's freaking me out, man, because you know, part of why I've been able to accomplish things like this, you know, invisible electromagnetic pyramidal phalanx film crew, you know, movie magic bullshit in the past, was because I was able to understand the mechanisms enough to be able to triangulate the possibilities in the future, right? So it's not really predicting the future or any bullshit like that. I'm not making those claims, but point being is, if you understand something and you understand the potentials and the pathways and the circuitries, you can kind of see where it's leading. And holy fuck if it doesn't freak me out to watch the truth community and see some of the places that it's leading people. So just trying to throw my 2 cents in there.